read. So who's next? Ridiboni, I think you had your hand next.
I started reading the book on the 10th. Most of the people were already deep into the book, and on the group, comments were coming being negative. So when I started reading the book, I was so looking forward to reading it because I wanted to feel what you guys were feeling. But when I started reading it, I was like, guys, what is it that you don't like about this book? I actually loved it from the first page. Like the lines, the words. I resonated so much with the words. I loved it. I loved his style of writing, and I loved the humor. I laughed so much. I laughed so much. I actually liked it. The only thing that I struggled getting is the many characters and their names. Oh yeah, that is a mess. But I love the book.
Yeah, no,
I
there
am
were.
looking forward to it because I haven't finished it. But yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay. No, I think the many characters I want to talk about after this, because I think a lot of people were quite confused about all the characters, and it forced you to concentrate. It wasn't a book that was an easy read because of that, because there were just so many characters. You had to remember so many names. But we'll discuss that later. Kanyelwa, what were your thoughts about the writing style? And more importantly, were you one of the people who got into it at the beginning, or did you just have to push yourself past the first and second moon?
I think I got into it in the first moon, but to be honest, I didn't enjoy the writing style of this author. Well, the English is straightforward. You can understand what he's saying, and you don't have to go to the dictionary a lot. But the second person narration of what Maali does, and then the dialogue that seemed to be happening amongst the other characters in the book, it just felt chaotic. Like I struggled to understand what's what, and the first moon felt very painful to read for me. I don't know whether I wasn't in a good space to actually give it a good try because I was also busy as well. So yeah, that's how I felt about it. But having gone past the first moon, it felt slightly different, like someone else is writing the book now, not the person that wrote the first moon. So when someone said it was actually edited for another audience, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, I think the writing style got better for me once I moved on from the first moon. It started becoming more clearer. I could follow the conversations and the story better.
I think for me, what was challenging, although I enjoyed the book from the beginning, I agree that the first moon was difficult. And I think it's because it was also so long, right?
Yes.
After the second moon, the chapters are shorter. And then you're also used to the writing style by that point. But it was quite a drag, and figuring out where each character is supposed to be placed. Yeah, but I want to come back. I'm going to come back to your use of the word chaotic about this book. I don't want to start it now, but I'm going to start with you when I discuss the chaos of the book and the writing stuff. But I'm going to come back to that. Nobelungu, you have your hand up, and then Neo, Atechang, and then Connie. Then we wrap up this section.
Okay, I also enjoyed the book from get-go. I also enjoy like dark humor and the religious aspect, since I'm non-religious, so a lot of the jabs like really got me laughing, and that's all I was highlighting.
You're
said,
so
"What?
mean. You're so mean. You're so mean. You're like, take all the jabs and religion.
I was highlighting all of those parts and posting on my WhatsApp, like, So I was really enjoying the book on that front. I also enjoyed even the light humor and but the characters, yeah, it's a lot. And I ended up not bothering, like knowing this is who, like I'm just committed to the storyline and basically understanding like who killed him, what happened, But I haven't finished, so I'm still gonna continue reading this book. Like I said in the WhatsApp chat, that I feel like this is my soulmate in book form, because
Oh, that is so sweet.
humor and the struggle with religion and him not liking this God person very much. So that's why I feel like, me and this book.
You see, that's the beauty of book clubs, right? You find your soulmates in books that you would have never read. So I'm glad that you found your soulmate, a book that you'll likely recommend a lot as well. Noah, your thoughts on the writing style and when you got into the book?
I think I echo everybody's thoughts in terms of how what do you call this? The humor in it. I think we all loved the humor. In the beginning, I found it very unsettling because of the descriptiveness of the war and just the characters and how his body was just mutilated. I found that so unsettling. So from the first moon, I just had to give myself a break. And I initially thought I'll never be able to finish the book, but then I went on to the second moon, and then that's when I actually started really enjoying it. I think another thing that I found challenging as well is the setting. It's not very familiar to me because I'm in South Africa, and things that are happening there, I just had to sit with a Google and research. And I appreciated that there was actually a map actually at the back. So while I was reading, I could actually use it as a reference to be like, oh, now we're here, we're overlooking this, and this is happening. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
I read the ebook. I didn't realize that was the physical copy has a map. So I'm gonna definitely get the physical copy because I really did enjoy this.
Why are you on mute, Lakini?
Oh, sorry. I'm talking and I'm talking and I'm mute. I was actually talking to you, Atlegang. I was saying you're the last person to talk and discuss the writing style as well as when you got into the book, because you kept pushing everybody. Just get past the second moon. It'll get better. What were your thoughts about the writing style, the use of the second person, and when did you get into the book?
I'm not mad at second person writing, but I'm not mad at it only if it's executed well. And I think this author really did execute on like the second person writing. I understood the context around it, right? Imagine yourself, you didn't know you're dying and now you're dead and you find yourself in a new world. So I understood why the first moon was like that, because you need to try and get a grip on where you are. Suddenly you're in a waiting room. What are you doing there? You don't know that you're dead, you know? I really liked the second person writing. I feel like once in a while we need to get a book that challenges us and really challenges our reading. Not that I went to the shops and then I came back and I found him cheating and then we broke up. Now we're back together. No. So I really like that you guys went on this journey with me, and I was pushing for us to get past the second moon, because I think after those first two moons, there was a calm to the storm and there was a story that was coming out, because moon one, there's a lot happening. Moon two, there's a lot happening. But I also think we need to develop the skill of tuning out the noise when you're reading to identify a storyline and say, this is where we're going with it. Because sometimes I was just like, where are we going? Where are we going? How is this going to end? But I'm really glad that I reached the light. I had to push myself. It wasn't easy. And then yeah, so I joined this, and I'm really happy that, I'm not the only one who reached the light, and we can discuss the story.
I'm also glad that most of us eventually got to the light, and then this was our book read. I enjoyed, just to pick up on your second person writing style. I think, Maali's dead, and there's this separation between his soul and his body. So the choice for me for writing it in a second person was kind of removing himself from himself. Because his body's floating in the Beira River, well, his head, and the rest of his body has been smoked up. So it's kind of like this jarring. I can imagine when you die and you see your body floating and you're like, is that me? No, it can't possibly be me. So writing it in first person would be like an ownership admission that I really am dead and this is my story but writing it in second person for me felt like that removal and from his body and his self. Yeah, so for me, that I really enjoyed that, and it placed me in a position of being able to empathize because it was a you, so I could picture everything, and like if it was written in first person. So to go back to Kangelo, because you're going to be the first person I asked to give us your opinion. When you start the book in the first moon, right, you read about this photographer, Gamla Slut, who's dead. And he finds himself in this, he calls it the tax office, and everybody is looking for a rebate. And when I read that, I was like, one of my favorite movies, I'm not sure if you've seen it, guys, but it's What Dreams May Come. It stars Robbie Williams, and he's dead in the movie. He dies in the movie. It's based on a book, and he finds himself in heaven. And it is the most beautiful depiction of heaven, where heaven or the afterlife, if you go to heaven, is your wildest dreams and these beautiful colors. And then hell is the opposite, and just like the darkness of your dreams, right? But you still have heaven and hell. And then I picked up this book and I saw the afterlife. And then I was like, what the hell is this? Because this is not what I want when I die. This is chaotic. This feels like Earth. It is depressing. So, Kangela, you alluded to the writing style being chaotic.
Yeah.
My question to the group is, when you read and were introduced to the afterlife and how we usually think about the afterlife and how we've been indoctrinated to think about it, what were your thoughts? I mean, you already said that the writing style was chaotic.
Well, it was very interesting to hear about death from a perspective of someone who's dead, who's experiencing it, or from someone who just woke up and found themselves in it. I also got to a position of having to empathize and understand that this person was okay, and then the next minute they are in this in-between space. And maybe it does make sense that it is this chaotic. It just felt like a lot was happening, like a lot. Like, can't you just freeze and maybe just keep doing something? I don't know. It was busy. It was busy. It was busy.
What were your thoughts? I mean, I think sometimes we have a vision of what we think the afterlife will be like. You either go to heaven, or you go to hell, or you go to like in between. But he finds himself.
Disappointed. I was very disappointed because my view of it is that it's peaceful. We always told that someone who's in heaven, they are resting, they are okay now. So I didn't like the chaos. Like, I'm tired already. Only to go to this. No. It felt hectic. It felt like hectic, and only to realize that the whole drama is just one day. Like, I would have died again. It's a lot.
You would have opted out of being.
I died again. It is a lot for one day.
It was a very long first moon. Thanks for those views, Kangela. To me, what did you think of the afterlife, especially in those first few kind of pages where he's literally just waking up in this office?
I liked it, guys. I really liked it because this whole idea of dying and then you're either going to heaven or hell, like, I really like that. I get a chance to really, like, 7 moons, guys, and you have a chance to do whatever. I like that. Just that in between, but not getting stuck in there, right? So the possibility of getting stuck in the in between is always something to be aware of. But that different perspective of the afterlife, for me, that was very exciting. I wouldn't just want to die and then just go to heaven or hell. What if I want to just point a few people, not be a ghost, go around, go to my workplace, I don't know, whispering into my boss's ear, that sort of stuff. So yeah, I that depiction was good for me.
So you want me to come? You want to come back and whisper to a few people, give them lotto numbers?
Bona, I'm there whispering, confusing. You know how they like what they did to Driver Money in the at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to do that where somebody's like, I'm hearing voices, and there's me.
Amy, I'm starting to think you might not make it there because Utswana Lena, you like chaos. So me and you might not even make there. We might go to Mahakali at this
Yeah,
rate.
no. I'm not getting swallowed by that thing, but I'm just like roaming around. And then by my sixth moon, I'll start getting serious and go sort myself out.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Maali, what were your thoughts of the afterlives, especially the office where he finds himself in?
Yeah, I was so confused. So when I picked up with, okay, he's in the afterlife, and the afterlife isn't, as you know, like you said, traditionally like heaven and hell. I was just like, okay, and like what's going on? Like a lot is going on. And when I started figuring out, which it's not as simple as just, like this is the heaven or like the hallelujah, like, life is great, and the other route is not so great. And then the other people were saying, yeah, if you want revenge on who killed you or whatever, come this side and stuff. I'm like, what? We are fighting even more after death. So I'm with Kangelwa on this one, but I would die. Like, can I die and after a death or something? Because why am I fighting even in my afterlife? Like, why is there more fighting? I did this on earth rather. So the first moon it was a lot. It was a lot. I mean, I guess we were introduced to the characters, and like Atahang was saying, you really had to focus because the amount of times that the author described the same person throughout the book just got to me. I was like, we already know this person is a detective. Can we move from the fact that they detect whoever? We know this from First Moon. So it was, yeah, the whole idea of heaven and hell was completely shocked out of my system. I just started questioning myself. And I mean, I'm a believer, so I was just like, sure, I hope there's really a heaven because I'm not planning to do more lifing after death. Like, it's fine. I did my piece. It's okay. But yeah.
Thanks, Maali. You touched on something very interesting. I always tell my family, I mean, in African tradition, we believe in ancestors, right? And I always tell them, do not come to my grave, okay? I don't want to work when I'm dead. When I'm dead, I don't want you to bother me. I'm not bringing you any luck. I'm not bringing you well wishes. Don't bother me when I'm dead. So this felt like being bothered, as you're rightly saying, again, after death. And Leah, what were your thoughts about Shehan's description and visual of what the afterlife is like?
I also liked it. I liked it a lot, and I think I'll agree with. I can't really. I think it's Kangelwa, who
Yes.
said as a believer as well. So someone also who has a strong belief system in Christianity and all that. I kind of felt like it was humorous to just think of the afterlife in a different perspective. I really loved the wordplay because the imagery was fantastic. Here in Kenya, it's a typical bureaucratic office. That's what we go through when we're trying to apply for passports. When you're trying to apply for anything, you go to an office, you find you're in the wrong line. You make a line, you find you're not in the right line. Someone is giving instructions, someone is shouting, someone is crying. And I kind of felt like it gave me a different perspective, and it was funny. I was reading through, and when he met the lady, the one who had died previously, and had taken photos of him, and this, yes, it was just funny, just listening, and it gave me a different perspective of the afterlife that I'd never thought of, because the other afterlife that I've always imagined is not realistic. I don't know where I'll see gold streets and all that, and it was just nice to see. Yeah, it was nice to see that, you know what, this is a typical Kenyan office, and we are made in God's image, and so maybe this is what we are, chaotic, and it was just funny, and interesting for me. The wordplay for me was beautifully done at the first moon, and I think for that was what kept me going, because it was like he was confused, and that's what I always think about death. You died, maybe you don't remember how you died, and you're in this chaotic place, and there are all these people, and as he kept on saying, there was brides, women who were dressed as brides, and that's normal for us here in this country. When people die, you dress them in their wedding dresses, and it just gave me like a very good imagery of what the afterlife would look like from his perspective. So I really did enjoy just reading through the past life and the chaos and the bureaucracy and the nonsense that he put in there, and I appreciate that he did not focus on himself at that first point. It was more of us to just understand where he was coming from, and from the perspective of all the characters that were introduced in the first moon. So for me, it was really, really fantastic. Yeah, I think he said they're married in their wedding dresses. Yes, a lot of us here in this country, when people die, you wear your wedding dress, and that's what you're buried in. So I kind of guess that's why he was saying that a lot of the women were in wedding dresses, and they were walking around. And it was just nice to see that it was such a good comparison of cultures, that whatever is happening here is also happening in other places, and we are not the weird ones, because clearly he was writing also from a point of his own culture. And it was very refreshing, to be honest. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the first moon.
I love how you are happy to die and then get back into the chaos of African, or even a lot of I guess
because if you think about it, I always wonder, like, do we go there and then there's a line? We are millions of us who have died on the same day, and there's someone from Pakistan, there's someone from South Africa, there's someone from Kenya. All of us are just walking in. I guess I just appreciated that it was kind of realistic. He made heaven look like it is doable. It's not kumbaya, and we're walking in. Some of us are walking in because you've killed someone. Some of us are, all of us are walking into this afterlife, and then we are going to be determined. So I kind of felt like it was like the purgatory he was talking about for Catholics or something. And then that is when now we go to heaven and we find nice things, or you go to hell and you find whatever it is that is down there. So I kind of felt like there was that confusion space, and it validated my thoughts, because that's what I've always thought about that afterlife for myself as well. So I really enjoyed it.
At least it'll feel familiar, right? As you say, you'll be asked to go to the 42nd floor, and then it'll be closed, like most admin offices on our continent. And you'll have to come back the next day.
Line. You walked in, you think I'm here because I killed someone, and you're in the line for people who maybe died because of gonorrhea or something. I kind of just feel like it was nice to just, you're just confused, and there's only one clerk. That's what we always see in our government offices. There's only one clerk, and people are shouting at each other, and people want to fight. I think the writer was almost fighting at the beginning, because he was also equally confused. And and you don't know that you're dead really until you realize that you are. So for me, I guess that's why I enjoyed it. It was chaotic and funny at the same time.
Thank you for those thoughts, Leah. Ridiboni and then Nobelungu. Ridiboni, what were your thoughts on that afterlife depiction?
I first like to comment on what Leah has just said. Being married in your wedding dress, wow, that's weird. Like, of all things that you did in your life, they only pick your wedding dress. I would like to research more onto that. Thank you for sharing.
Munola says her
Like,
wedding
to me,
dress wouldn't fit. Munola says her wedding dress wouldn't fit.
Yes, I want to say, like, to me, I would really love a chance to be dead and have a chance to reflect on who killed you, how did you die. I remember there was a question about, would you like your life back? And he said no. That was really funny. So yeah, they're giving us a different picture of heaven, between heaven and Satan. Now we know what Satan will. She's a young omkhulu, but those afterlife that they are talking about, like somebody says heaven is being doable. It sounds interesting, and it's really funny how he wrote about it. I really enjoyed that part, and I enjoy finding out more things and learning more about this afterlife thing.
Thanks, Ridiboni, for your thoughts on that. Nobelung and then Tandega, and then we wrap this particular section up. Nobelingi, your thoughts on the depiction of the afterlife?
Okay, so for me, I was just like, what the heck is going on? Because I don't believe in heaven, so I don't like that idea of heaven, like where I'm gonna like be singing the same song. Food is so delicious. Now I'm not gonna be hungry. I will, so I don't like that depiction of heaven. But at the same time, I also don't believe in hell, that there's people who are just roasting and roasting and roasting. Like at some point, it must end. So there's a part in the book where, like, Israel Dimone just said it now, where he was asked if he wants to go back, and he says, I don't want to be reborn, want to be anything. Can I just be nothing? So for me, that's like my ideal of what happens when you die. You are
Oblivion. He says oblivion. Just stop existing.
Just stop. And even if you believe in reincarnation, for me, I think the easiest way to explain it would be you reincarnate as a fly from the bacteria that turns into the worm, then you're a fly, and that's you. That's the reincarnation. That's the end of it. So in terms of what was happening, I was like, oh, no ways. I would also want to die again. I like, if it's the end, let it be the end. To come back, and now I must understand who did what. I must learn to whisper. No.
You want it to all go black, and you don't want to come back.
Yes, it must just be it. Like you were saying, I also always say the same thing, and they say I'm gonna be such an evil ancestor. I'll say, just don't. Don't. Just, if you say to me, rest in peace, then please mean it. And don't burn candles, don't summon me, because if you summon me, you will be sorry that you ever did.
So you're like me, you don't want to come back. You're like, don't pray to me, don't do anything. It's going to be good for you to not do that.
I seriously mean it when I say they better not.
Hopefully they'll listen. Tandega, your thoughts?
For me, it made sense. I actually like the way he depicted it, because that's the way I picture it in my head. Because this idea of pearly gates and, everlasting happiness, something's just creepy about that. Being happy every day, everything is perfect, everything is beautiful. And I feel like it would be a shock to the system, coming from planet Earth. Next thing, happiness, there's no way. So I feel like it makes sense if it's like an office, you get to calm down, try to figure out like what's going on, like find your bearings. Not now, you just get there, all of a sudden hell, all of a sudden heaven, wherever you are, wherever you're gonna land. It doesn't make sense for me. And for me, I can picture how people burning, yes, but I can't picture people in heaven all happy, lovey-dovey, living, perfect, beautiful lives. So for me, I like the way he did it. It made it more realistic. It made it, yeah, this is the afterlife I think happens. Because also dying is also not black and white. The way you live is not black and white. So I feel like the afterlife is also not just going to be as simple as we think.
Yeah, no, I agree. This book was enlightening in its depiction of the afterlife and making us question what would happen afterwards, because we do have it in this glorious, picturesque, setting in our heads, and maybe it's not that. And I'm glad that I read this book so that I can start rethinking some of my actions. And that leads me to the next topic. Maali has 7 days to go to the light, right? And from that office that he's in, and he's initially in, he then kind of gets transported by Sena into the in-between. And the in-between is essentially kind of a more chaotic Colombo, where he's from and where he lived. And for me, what was interesting, so I want to find out from everybody, and I think now it's being alluded to, this discussion about animals, right? And leopards wanting to come back as human. When I read the section talking about leopards having animals having souls, and them also getting reincarnated and being able to speak in this afterlife, I started thinking to myself, maybe I should. I mean, I don't eat red meat, but maybe I should stop eating meat. Maybe my interaction with Earth and some of its plants and different, species should change. So I want to know, what did you read in this book that had you rethinking some of your actions on Earth? And I know in the WhatsApp group, a number of people alluded to the fact that they started questioning their own internal thoughts, because they thought, okay, maybe they're not your internal thoughts. Maybe it is ghosts that are whispering to you, or even demons that are whispering to you. So what are some of the things you had to reconsider that were in the afterlife that you thought, interesting. I don't know if the way I'm living has to change now. Connie, I think you had your hand up first.
Okay, for me, the animal part, that was the creepy part for me. The idea of keeping pets and eating meat, and that scared me silly. It's like, okay, that ends you chasing out of the house. Like, for me, that was difficult. Maybe that's your aunt, that's your mother. That's like, for me, the animal part just took me out. I didn't need that in the book. It's affecting my diet and my lifestyle.
Are you going vegetarian now, or you can't even eat fish? You don't know if fish are, you're pescatarian. You can't eat plants. You don't know if they have a soul.
Yeah, like, should we have a conversation before we sleep? What do we think? Like, for me, that was the creepy part. I never, in my wildest dream, imagined the whole animal situation. To say that pet you kept, and it's gonna confront you in the afterlife, in the in-between. Like, I don't particularly like the food you were eating. Like, for me, that was creepy part. I didn't interest the animal, but I think I like the tea. It's fine. Like, the animal, no, I was not cool with that.
You're not happy with the animals. You're having to change your diet.
I might become a vegetarian. Maybe by next meeting I'll be a proper vegan, not even vegetarian at this point. A proper vegan. I can't even eat eggs.
Kotlako says the cow they had for lunch could be seeking revenge on the other side. Tumi, I'm not sure you had your hand earlier, so I'm not sure if this is about this particular question, and Leah as well. Or is this a previous hand?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry. Yeah, mine is
okay.
the previous hand. Yeah.
Danega, do you have thoughts on this? Some of your beliefs that you had in this book was an eye opener for you.
With regards to the animals, because I have an overactive imagination, I've always wondered. But I've taken it as I've made my decision. Maslangani, let's meet in the afterlife. Confront me. I've done it. But no.
So you're like, see you in the afterlife, we'll deal with it then.
Yes, see you in the afterlife, you'll deal with it then. In Zulu, bathi konoba kapile. So sometimes, you're here because you are campaigning. So animals, unfortunately,
as the leader of the pack, you're like,
yes,
look, I have my rights.
I think it happens. I understand, veganism, vegetarianism, but culturally, we're always slaughtering. So it means that in the afterlife, I have many battles.
So after school is after school.
After school is after school, because for somebody, we're also an animal in a way. So
true.
I will also be having people that I will be confronting, and there are people who are going to confront me. It's the circle of life, and it's a choice I've decided to make. So for those who've decided to go vegan, we'll have less to fight.
Okay. See you after school in the
after school. Yes. But there is a bit of guilt, but
you'll be fine.
I don't know. It's because you don't know. It's also the thing of I can't now for something that I don't know. It's a possibility maybe, and I'm only going to find out afterwards. Only confirmed afterwards. So it's not really going to change the choice that I've made now.
Okay. It's an interesting thought. We will deal with it and see the consequences once we're not here. I want to now discuss and move into the more kind of gruesome, theme of the book. The book deals with the Sri Lankan civil war of the 1980s. And what I really enjoyed in telling this story for me, and as I said in the WhatsApp group, I'm a big fan of history. I'm a history buff, and I also am a rabbit hole reader. And I enjoyed the fact that Shehan decided to tell the story using real life characters. A lot of the people that he talks about in the book are real characters. For me, it felt like it humanized the story, it made it more real. Sometimes when we read about war, you know, because you don't know the characters and they're fictional characters, you can't relate and picture them as humans or as people with families and loved ones. But the decision to use the Dr. Renee, the decision to use Senna, the decision to use even Richard, the journalist, that the first moon he quotes him, I thought was very impactful. So I wanted to discuss what your thoughts were about the fact that Shehan decided to use real people and their stories in telling the story, and how you think it impacted your reading and your experience of the book. Any thoughts, to me? And then Bali?
Yeah, I like that. I don't really read a lot of nonfiction books. Um, no. I don't really read a lot of fiction books like this. I like to read murder mysteries and people dying, being killed and stuff. So the fact that this had like real information that I didn't even know. I did not know that there was even a war in Sri Lanka. And adding those realistic characters, I think it's a fun way of, I guess, learning about history, but also being entertained, So that that's something, and I think that's also one of the things that kept me reading, because I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And when I Googled and I realized that, oh my goodness, these are real characters. Yeah, we're not just, making up heaven and earth, but that was very interesting. Who would have known that all of that I didn't,
Mm.
all of that history about Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like one of my favorite books is Chimamanda's The Half of a Yellow Sun, about the Biafra War, right? And I never knew about it until I read it in her book. But it's fictional characters that she talks about. And although that book impacted me, I think reading about real people was even more impactful. So I really enjoyed that. Mbali, your thoughts on the use of real characters and real people in telling the story? Thanks to me for your thoughts.
Cool. I actually didn't think deeply about this until you asked the question, but I remember feeling like the part where, the political characters, we talking about that felt more real. It felt like I was reading historical fiction. And then somehow I could separate when we were talking with, the centers and in the afterlife, in the in-between. That felt more fiction. Like I was like, well, surely that's not real. But I guess how he wrote about, what was happening and the political setup and everything that was happening, that felt more real. So I think it was a good kind of merge between the two worlds of fiction and not fiction, but still educating us enough to know the truth in a sense, right? So some of the stuff that you learned about, you can still pick out of them and take it as like actual information and knowledge that you know. Yeah, so now that I think about it, I did get a feeling of, oh, this is real. I mean, also in the WhatsApp group, you guys talking, and I actually didn't know that being a rabbit hole reader was a thing, and I think I might be jumping into being one, and I'm scared for myself because, yeah, it's just gonna go deeper and deeper. So I never used to do that. I was just like, I'll take what I take and then move on to the next thing. But yeah, I felt the real side of the book, and I also kind of felt the fiction side of it to be, yeah, that's not real, surely not.
Yeah, no, I just encourage you to be a rabbit hole reader. I know a lot of really random facts as a person, like, and that's because I'm a rabbit hole reader. I know a
No,
lot
no,
of, I
don't
know
worry.
a whole lot of nonsense. So
No,
please.
don't worry. There's a book that I read, and I took that book as the truth for a long time. And I don't know for what reason did I not think it was fiction, because it depicted real life stories. And I saw somebody like say, "Oh, this is my favorite historical fiction book," and I was like, "No, that's not fiction. That's real," because it's real life stories. But once you dig deeper, you just learn that the author was just trying to depict a situation that was happening at the time, but also trying to, I guess, give it some humor or trying to lighten it in some way. But yeah, thank you for introducing us to, yeah, rabbit holing.
Pleasure. Leah, what are your thoughts on the fact that the author decided to talk about real life characters?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I didn't know it was called Rabbit Hole Reader until I joined the group. I didn't know there was anything like that, because that's what I usually do. When I hear something, I go Google, and then I guess it makes sense that you go into that rabbit hole and you find your hours and hours into it. I think the one thing that stuck out for me was the fact that he used Richard Dizoisa. I think that was his name. He was a photojournalist, and I think reading about it, because I kind of felt like it made sense why the book started the way it did, because Richard was actually murdered by a gang, and so it made sense why he wasn't sure, like why he was there, because I think that's what I think murder should look like you just die. And I think reading about his story and the kind of human rights activism that he did in Sri Lanka, and just generally the kind of work he did in photography, and to highlight the stories of these people during the time that is being written in this book, was it kind of gave me a sense of understanding better, because it wasn't fictional. And I appreciate that you said about the same thing I felt with Hapa Elosan. I think it was good, because it's the same thing with me. I kind of really understood the Biafra war reading that book, because it was coming from people who are living through it. And I think just understanding the book from Richard's perspective is what made me keep going. Otherwise, I would have dropped off. But it was like, oh, you know what? This guy is actually dead. And this is pretty much what's happening is, this is probably him in an afterlife, having been murdered with no shoes, and or one shoe or a broken camera. And I think it was just interesting to see from there, even the other characters, you could tell, he kept mentioning people who in the Sri Lanka history were part and parcel of the struggle, and some of them, the politicians and all that. It was just nice to meet the friends, the fictional and the non-fiction, and honestly, I really loved this book. I really did. So yeah, it was good for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you're also gonna be yeah, you're right. Read on the Richard and you're right. Shehan was interviewed and asked well, who Maali is, and it is Maali was inspired by Richard. And an interesting fact in my rabbit hole reading discovery is that the title of the book and the name Maali Almeida, Richard was a journalist, but also an actor. And one of the characters that he played in his last movie, their name was Maali Almeida. So the name Maali Almeida comes from the character that he played in his last movie before he was murdered. So my rabbit hole reading does come in handy.
Oh, you're and I want to add on to that. I think also the sexuality that plays a role in the book. I think he also he was also like closeted, Richard himself. So I think that's why he was playfully bringing out the sexuality without really bringing it out in the whole book. He was kind of like creating this queer character without necessarily saying that this is like, like, oh, this guy is gay or queer, because I think there's a part where he says, I just like beautiful boys. And I think Richard struggled with his sexuality, he was very quiet about his sexuality, and it was always a rumor, again in the rabbit hole. So it was nice to just put a face to the story. So I love that you understood that. You've got that Maali Almeida thing. I love that. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. And Connie, I think you're the last one to discuss this particular point.
Okay, for me, I felt like the book was not necessarily about the war, and the choice to use actual characters was to bring us back to this is the reality of the time and what was happening. It to bring sort of focus to that, to say yes, there was a war. This is what was happening, because considering even Mali was not killed because of the war, but it was a very important part of the story of the book, the actual war. And I also never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. Same thing with Half of the Yellow Sun, picked up a book because it was Mamanda, and I learned this historical fact that I never even knew nothing about. So I enjoy that part, that he actually used real characters to say, yes, I'm not going to focus this whole book on the war, that I'm going to bring you back and say this is about real people who went through real situations and all these bad things. So, I went and researched because of that. If that was not done, I wouldn't. It's another nice story set in a war era. Now it's bringing real faces and real life to the story. So I absolutely love that part about the real characters.
I find it, yeah, I find it interesting that you say, the beauty of having real characters is that it centered them, and then the war became kind of a background to their story. And I never thought of that, but that is quite true, that the people became far more important than the war and their story. Yeah. So I think the author did an exceptional job then of telling people's story and not a war story. I want to now move us along to discuss the characters in the book. There's so many characters in this book, but the main characters, right? So it's Maali, it's Didi, his lover, and Jackie, his girlfriend that he lived with, and then obviously his mother plays a central role, and Stanley, who is Didi's father. Um, that's in his real life. And then in the afterlife, there are all these other characters, Dr. Renee, Sena, etc. Right? I want to know, of all the characters that we meet in this book, who was your favorite character and who was your least favorite character? For me, I loved Sena so much. The revolutionary who was causing chaos in the afterlife, trying to recruit and continue to live the life he lived on Earth. And part of the reason I loved him is, the book talks about karma, and that eventually with time, people will get their karma. And Senna's like, no, they should get it now. And I'm going to play a role in giving them the karma. I love that because there's a sense of justice to it, because otherwise it felt like everybody doesn't get their karma, right? And he says, no, I'm not waiting for God or the creator to bring the karma. I'll bring it myself. So I really, really loved Sena as a character. And it was incredibly funny. His observations about the world were hilarious. Then my least favorite character was actually Maali. I found the fact that Maali lived his life without choosing a side disturbing, and then when he dies, he puts his loved ones' lives at risk. So I didn't like him as a character at all. So I want to know your thoughts on who your favorite character was, and who your least favorite character was. Let's start with Atlegang. You haven't spoken a lot today. You've allowed us to all go on and on.
It's so nice to be on the other side and like.
Nah, and it's my last time doing facilitation, so you must enjoy. Give
So
us your
nice. So nice. I didn't like Maali. I think my least favorite character, because I think he's not a likable person. Very chaotic, doesn't give a damn about anything, very aloof. And it's unfortunate that he's the character that we interact with the most. Well, I guess because the story is about him, I really didn't like him. I just want you to touch on when you said you don't know when he didn't choose a side. What do you mean? And then favorite character. Yeah, guys, there's a lot of characters. I don't think I had time to form a connection with anybody. It's just a lot of moving pieces at once. So there isn't a standout character that I can say this was my fighter.
So you didn't like anybody. You're just like everybody's meh.
I mean, I don't have a problem with them, but not necessarily anybody's my fave. Do you get me?
So you're just like, I mean, I'm indifferent to all of you.
Yeah, like yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna park your first question about. I think I might have jumped the gun with my dislike of Maali about what I meant by he didn't pick a side. So let me park that, and we'll discuss it after this.
Okay, cool.
To me,
But I'll
what
give
were
some-
yeah? What were you saying, Atakan?
I'll give somebody else a chance now. To me, you can go.
My least favorite character was Didi. Oh my gosh. I just did not like that guy. He was spoiled. He was in denial. He was just selfish. I don't know. Like I just didn't like him. Maali, not that I didn't like him, but he was very selfish. I found him very, very selfish. And he used people who loved him, like I didn't like the way he used Jackie and just pushed her to the side. And then now all of a sudden it's Jackie who really um fulfilled his dying wishes, that make sure the world sees my pictures. And that girl really, really loved him. And yeah, look at selfish Didi. He just carried on, he went to Mali's memorial with his new boyfriend. I mean, yeah. Not that Jackie didn't move on, but like, yeah, I just didn't like Mali and Didi. They deserved each other. I think I share your sentiment. Senna was was a unique character. I enjoyed him. A lot of the things that I underlined in the book was actually things said by Senna, and just his views like, Bona, there's no karma. We give the karma. Revenge, you give it now. This is your chance. You see, so I like Senna.
Great. Senna, I said Senna was our Rambo.
Yeah, Bona.
Our revolutionary. Fighter, that one. Kangelwa, your thoughts on on the characters?
So I found Mali's mother's character very funny, hair drinking problem, and also being a bad mother and blaming Mali for it. Yeah, I felt like that was funny. Senna, I like Senna, the go-getter energy, always out trying to dribble someone. So I enjoyed that a lot. Maali, I felt like he was a very colorful character, careless as well. I don't know. I didn't hate him. I'm in between with him.
Okay, Maali people either like him or they really, really hate him. Mbali, then Connie, your thoughts, Mbali, first.
Cool. I don't know if this has been touched on already, but the Mali's names throughout the book, especially in the first moon, like I don't know, the interchange of his name being, some part of his father, some part that was confusing. I don't know what that is, or if there's a historical context that I missed there.
Yeah, so
that was,
he changes his name because his middle name is his father's, I think. But him and his father are estranged. His father moved to the US or something.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a great relationship, and his father was homophobic. So he decided to change his name. So I guess a rebellion against his father.
Okay, yeah, that was okay. But in terms of characters, I'm also like Adehang. I'm just like, where, yeah, we're just we're journeying through too many people, right? I don't know how I feel about Maali. I honestly, I don't know. But if I had to choose a likable character, not that I love him, I would choose. I don't know why I'm saying this, but I'll choose that Kasim policeman guy.
Kasim!
Hear me out. Hear me out.
No,
Hear me out. Hear me out. I remember I said a likable. If I had to choose, because shame the poor guy had a sense of conviction inside him throughout this time. He didn't want to do none of that, but he still was doing it, you know. And I mean, at the end, he helped, I guess, Jakey. So I kind of sympathize with him, like even from the onset when they started taking the money, and it was like, dude, like, what are we doing? But he's still doing the stuff, you know. He's still moving along, but he does have this deep sense of conviction that no, man, I shouldn't be doing this stuff, but he's doing it anyway. So I kind of felt sorry for him. I was like, I hear you. You know, you can be stuck where you have a choice, but you don't really. But you're just moving with the flow. So yeah, if I had to choose a character, I'll probably choose him. I thought about Jackie, but also I was like, ish. Also with her, I didn't know what was going on. With like, yeah, she was just floating. But yeah, that's my take.
Balitumi says she also kind of liked because she'd root for Kasim. So I'm worried about you guys as we're leading up to elections because you're saying as long as you have conscious nyana in your bribery, in your Coca-Cola. I'm worried about the 29th.
We're sober-minded for the elections.
But that I mean, I would have never picked. I would have not. I didn't even consider Kasim, but yeah, I guess he did save the day at the end and save Jackie's life. Leah, who were your favorite and least favorite characters, and then we'll end off with Connie.
I personally like Didi and Jackie.
You like Didi and Jackie?
Yeah, I don't know how I can separate them because I was kind of, I think throughout the story, when I was trying to read the story, I was kind of just weighing their love for this guy. Like, I was trying to see like who loves him more because honestly, to me, he was just a complete asshole. Like he had problems all through the whole story. That Maali guy had a problem from the beginning. I think even from the way he started, he seemed selfish. He was everywhere and nowhere, and I just appreciated. I think it is a reminder of how even in our flawed sense, we still find people who love us, and I think that's why I appreciated the two because I couldn't really separate them because they were all working so hard to try and find the root cause of his death. And I think I just liked the story of how it flows from them bribing police officers, them following up with the investigators to find him to when they found the body. I think it was just nice to see that friendship from different perspectives, especially from Didi, who was closeted himself.
Mm.
And I think for that it was as in it was interesting that they it was just a nice balance for me. It was a theme of friendship. Honestly, I was just looking at the friendship and putting myself in that situation and how weird it is for you to have friends who they're also battling their own problems. And so I really honestly I really love the two of them in that perspective. But then again, I didn't like the main character at all. I don't know if we are supposed to pick the main character as one of the options, but I guess I just didn't like him. At first I even thought it was a she at first, and then I realized later that it wasn't. And then I just kind of felt like he was kind of selfish. But then I also was seeing a lot of things about him that were in me, careers and all these things that we go through. And I think it is a good place of reflection because I think he was also looking at himself from a third eye from where he was. And so it's good also that we were able to see his life from the perspective of his friends and from the perspective of the war. And so I guess I didn't like him. I'm not even going to pretend I didn't like him. I like Didi and Jackie. And yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, they've noted here the quote that you gave, how even in our flawed sense, we still find people who love us, about Maali, right? And the less likable characters. I love that you're talking about reflecting on Maali and him being flawed, and I'm going to touch on that in the next kind of discussion point. But before that, let me give Connie an opportunity to talk about her favorite and least favorite character.
Okay, I'm scared now because it's like I'm the only one who likes Maali.
Oh my gosh! Give us your reasons, Connie.
Guys, you know what? I appreciated Maali's truth to himself. His selfishness, he was being true to who he was. I understood when he said he doesn't want to come back. Maali lived his life. The fact that, yes, I get it. I get it. But Maali was honest to himself. He did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. He was unapologetic of who he was. Yes, you love me. It doesn't mean I must stop everything and who I am for you. Because now that you love me, I must sacrifice myself. Maali was selfish to the core. Maali owned himself and he said, you know what, I don't care who says what, I'm going to serve me first. That is something none of us can do. It's one of those things we wish we could be, but we can never be because we don't live on an island by ourselves. We need everybody else. Maali lived his life to the fullest. He owned everything. I think I enjoyed Maali because his honesty is something even I'm afraid to own. You know, I appreciated that. I don't think there's anybody who can raise up their hands and say I own my truth to that extent. So that's why I love Maali. I enjoyed somebody owning who they are to the last bit. I don't care if you're mother, you're my friend, you're my lover, you're my employee, you're my what. I'm gonna put myself. I'm gonna gamble, go off with pretty boys, and do whatever. Like Maali lived his best life, and when he was murdered, he was that. He was happy with not being there anymore. It's like I've lived my life. There's nothing else for me to go back to. So yeah.
I love that observation. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have one question. In the beginning, when Senna and Maali met, Senna mentions to Maali that they met previously at a rally and whatnot. Does anybody know what happened then? I missed it. I don't know if they ever spoke about it. I don't know when they met. What was the story there? The backstory between the two of them. I totally missed that. I looked for it, but I lost it.
If I remember correctly, they, because of obviously Maali's job, he was covering the rally where Senna and his comrades were protesting, and he makes mention that he was there, and I think he tried to kiss him or something. And then Maali acted like he didn't remember him. But he was at a rally that Senna him and his comrades held, and that met there. But thanks, Connie, for that observation. I guess Maali is a self-care king, and maybe we should all be a bit like Maali. And that perspective for me is very interesting because I think it does allow me to give Maali a bit of grace. And Katlego says Maali lived as if he knew he would die young. And maybe when you do realize you're going to die young, or you have a feeling, and maybe because he was living in a wartime period, he thought, I put my life in danger all the time. So I need to put myself first and live my best life. I'm going to give him grace now. I'm going to give Maali some grace. Dawn, do you have something you want to add just to wrap up the section so that we can move on to the next one?
Okay. I'm not sure I really like any character to the point where I'm like, oh, I really feel deeply for this person. But there were two people I hated with, I'd say passion. I hated Didi. Oh my God. I hated him. Then I hated that Elsa lady. It was like she would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. Like someone just died. What are you doing? I hated Elsa. I hated Didi. I think I hated Didi so much also because I think I see a bit of his father in him, but he hasn't quite come into that side of himself yet. So yeah, those two. And I didn't really like anybody that much, but I don't mind Mali too, just like Connie spoke about.
You actually bringing me back because I remember when I was reading the book initially, I was like, I really hate this guy. And I was sad that Mali just thought so highly of him because I was like, this guy's a flip-flopper. And the person who was a ride or die for Mali really was Jackie. And yeah, someone alluded now in the discussion that Jackie's the one who didn't want to get rid of Mali's photos when in the end, and then Didi was off with a new lover in a different country. So yeah, I do think there were elements of his father. Yeah, he wasn't a very likable character either. So I want to go back to the point that Atlekgang asked me about earlier, and I said I'd park it, about sides, right? And that Mali didn't pick a side. There's a war going on, and there are all these different factions. In the section of the book, they describe who's who, you know, the Tamals, the government death squad. I think there's a part early in the book where Mali describes all the groups and what their motives are, and then he says, don't try to look for the good guys. There aren't none. This is like a translation he gives to the press to understand all the different factions in this war. And the question that keeps being asked in the book is, which side are you on? Whether it's in life when he's living or the people are living, or in the afterlife, Mali keeps getting asked, whose side are you on? And different characters in the afterlife and in life are being asked, whose side are you on? And when I talked about Mali never picking a side, it was in relation to that, that he was always neutral in this war. So what I really want us to discuss is this quote that said, don't try to look for the good guys, there aren't none. And it seems like Mali recognized that and decided he's not picking a side because there are no good guys. So I want to understand your thoughts on that in a lot of wars, or even in politics in general, there's always this idea that you should pick a side. And sometimes maybe everybody's the devil in this instance. So that's what I was alluding to. So what are your thoughts on that? That there were all these different factions all fighting, thinking that, I mean, to a large extent, some of them thinking that they're fighting for the good of a certain collective or for everybody. But Mali says, no, they're not good guys. Don't look for them. Atlekgang, your thoughts?
So I didn't go down the rabbit hole of discovering what the war was about. I didn't even know that Sri Lanka had a war until I picked up this book. But one thing when I was reading and just ransacking my brain, looking at all these factions, right? There's even a page that details with acronyms who's who.
Yeah.
What are they fighting for? What is the end goal here? What are we fighting for? I didn't get that in the book.
Like, who is your question? What is everybody fighting for, or the different factions fighting, or even how did the war start?
No, what are they fighting? Like, literally, what is the war about? I don't think we got that from the book. You'd have to know that if you did some research.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'll give you my my thoughts on, and I think it comes back to this quote about there are no good guys, right? And for me, I understand in the, I think they allude to it in the book, but not really in a lot of detail unless you do a lot of research. But the history of the war started as essentially a tribal war. The Tamils, who were a minority, and then the Sinhalas as the majority. So it started off in that way, and then descends obviously into chaos as it usually happens in wars, and other characters get involved and different factions and breakouts. So that's what they're fighting for. It's ownership of Sri Lanka, and who is the rightful owner of Sri Lanka, or who should have to some extent rights in Sri Lanka. That's the history of the war. But I for me, that's why I think that quote about there are no good guys resonated, because I thought it feels like everybody seems to think that they've got a good cause, but nobody has a conscience and going back and saying, is this war good for anybody at all? So maybe it goes back to your point. Really, why is this war happening? And it's possibly what you can ask in any war, right? Whose interest is this war? Nobelungu, your thoughts?
Okay, I just wanted to answer what Kgosi was, or Atlekgang was asking. I did end up having to like go on a deep dive in terms of understanding exactly what was going on, but it started off as a war because when the British went and fetched slaves from India and they came in to work, and then they like start off like a language war. So when they were there, then they started instituting that okay, English must be the medium of instruction. So now they were more advantaged because they had built schools for them to learn English. And then this was now disadvantaging the native people, the Sinhale people of the land. And then it was like flip-flopping now they were fighting with languages. Now they outlaw English as an official language and put Sinhala as the official language. So now this is trying to like combat the Tamil. Is it Tamil? The Tamils, yes.
Tamil, yeah.
Tamil from dominating the labor market. So it started off as that, but then it also went through to academics, because they also say when you're researching that it also impacted when they were applying for universities. For example, if you wanted to get into a doctorate, if you are Sinhale, the marks you had to get are not the same as if you were Tamil. So I think as South Africans, we've seen how people can be very xenophobic, and they be like, oh, all the Zimbabwe people are coming here and taking our jobs. So it started off like that. But then when the Tamils wanted to kind of have a separate government and be given a piece of land, because there's so many of them over so many generations, then it got worse. And when they retaliated, where the pathway says there's no good side, is because then when they retaliated, they were not discriminating civilians, everything. So they ended up themselves being the bad guys.
That's true. Thank you, Nabilung, for giving that that history. Yeah, it is detailed to some extent in the book, but thanks for doing the research. And yeah, I want to get Connie's thoughts on this idea of the different factions and there being no good sides.
Novelum pretty much covered what I wanted to say. And just to answer as well, I don't think it was covered in the book. This was the mini rabbit hole I went in, trying to figure out what happened. My take was the book was not necessarily about the war. Maybe that is why they didn't give detailed reasons why the war, what is happening. It is set in the war. And I think that is why we don't get that information, and we had to go off and do our own research and find out what exactly was happening at that time. I think I also found out when I did the research to figure out what happened in Sri Lanka, because I've never heard of it before. And I think it was not detailed in the book because the book was not necessarily about the war. So the war started today for these reasons, and these were the people who were fighting. It was Maali and who left. That we were dealing with. So yeah, that was my take from all of that.
Thanks, Connie. Tumi, you have your hand up, then Kangelo.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. There's like really no good guys in any war. Like I'm currently reading, sorry, and it's just I'm gonna drift off, but it relates. I'm currently reading The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. And in there also we're seeing like the war of Afghanistan and how they thought that once the Taliban would take over, things would be better, but actually things got even worse, So literally the same thing everywhere. everywhere. You just gotta choose your Twitter devil, or yeah, like you just gotta see who's better at some point, at something.
Yeah, it seems like whenever a war starts, right, even if it's a legitimate war, if I don't want to say any war is legitimate,
Hmm.
but a legitimate war, it does degenerate into losing why the war even started and in whose interest you're acting. And I love one of the quotes in the first moon where Maali says, evil is not what we should fear. Creatures with power acting in their own interests is what we should make us shudder. Because that's when you realize, I think even with all our governments and the political landscape, that everyone seems to say they're acting in the best interests of all citizens or their people and they have a constituency, but sometimes they're just acting in their own self-interest. And if you start seeing that as what you should fear, you'll be able to make more rational decisions. But anyway, Kangela, what are your thoughts on this idea that really there are no good people in this war? And then Leah will end us off.
For me, with everyone noting that it was a travel war, everyone trying to survive, there's really no good guys. But Maali did kind of highlight that he is taking photos as some form of justice. So I think he was maybe on the side of justice, not of any tribe.
Yeah, I think that was my observation as well, that maybe because he's at the forefront of all these at the forefront of this war, he realizes that it's futile to pick a side, right? So yeah, that's a key observation. Leah?
I think what my thoughts have been, have been patched up by different speakers who've talked about the same thing. As I also went into that rabbit hole, and I agree. I don't know if it's Tumi who said the book really wasn't. It was just a background, like a scenery, to give us an idea, but it wasn't based on the book. I think it wasn't the book. The story was not based on the book, but it was just to give us context in a way. And I think I noticed a lot of similarities between the war because of the favorism that they also. I don't know. I think you guys in South Africa, you went through a different kind of British madness that us in Kenya we went through a different one, whereby we went through the divide and rule. I think for you guys, yours was like next level bad. For us, we met the British subtle racism. I think you guys met the bad one. So that subtle racism, the one that we experience is what they also experienced in Sri Lanka. And what they did is that they pitted two factions against each other. The I've forgotten their names, but I think they were mentioned by the other speakers. And I think the favorism was so prevalent that by the time they were leaving, one group was feeling disenfranchised. And I think that's what brought about the war. But I think it was interesting. I don't know if any of you have read about the Rwandan genocide. It was almost a copyright storyline. And it was just interesting of how history is so the same and yet so different, because it was almost the same story as the Hutus and the Tutsis for me, where there was one group that was favored, they were given better opportunities, they were made to, I think one of the groups in the Sri Lanka war, I think before the war, I think it was the minority, the Tamils. I think the schools were taken to their areas. The rest of the guys were just disenfranchised. It was for me, I guess, as I said before, the book really gave me an understanding that we are not alone and that these British people were just, they were just worse off everywhere with different degrees. But it was nice to see that what they used here was also kind of different in Sri Lanka, but it was almost the same. But I have to agree with one of the speakers who said the book was not based on that. It was more of like a background. But I appreciated that he brought it up because I was able to read about it, and I really enjoyed just going into that rabbit hole.
Anne Marie in the chat raised an important point, and I think she writes that because the original book, The Chat with the Dead, was written for a South Asian audience, so it is targeted at an Indian audience essentially. Maybe the Shehan felt like he didn't have to write as much detail about the history because his audience would have been familiar with the history. So that also, I think, thanks Anne-Marie for bringing that key observation, that because the audience would have been familiar with the war, maybe he didn't feel he had to hash it out as much. Yeah, so probably I think that might be just a lot of truth in that, but the rest of us then had to go on a rabbit hole because we weren't quite familiar with it. I'm so sad that we're almost at the end of this discussion and I still have so much that I wanted us to discuss. But I want us to talk about the mystery part, because the book is as much about the war as it is about this mystery. Who killed Maali, or how did he die? Not even who, because we're not sure if he was killed or if he jumped at some point. He thinks maybe he might have committed suicide. I was very shocked about the ending and who actually killed him. I at some point thought it might be Didi because I disliked him so much, and I just thought maybe he found something about Maali that he disliked, or he saw the pictures that Maali had, and I thought, okay, maybe Didi killed him. And then it turns out that it was not him. I did not see that coming. Did anybody see it coming, that it would be Stanley who kills him, and why? So what were your original suspicions on how Maali died? I see Anne-Marie says she also thought Didi killed him. Badi?
I actually didn't really have a suspicion throughout the book. I was just as confused as I guess as himself, because he also didn't know. But just before we found out who killed him, I could tell. I was like, yep, it's gonna be this guy. And it was really him. So I don't know. I don't know what it was about the text just before we found out, but I just could tell that it's gonna be Didi's father. And it really was. So for me, I'm just gonna wrap up my thoughts. Then that wasn't shocking. Then I was like, all throughout all these moons, for us to get to this point, and that's it. That's it. So it kind of frustrated me because I felt like it was an anticlimax, and maybe because I kind of foresaw it. So then I was like, boring. Like, really? It could have been anybody else that we just didn't know much about. It could have been a Kasim. I mean, like randomly. But it just had to be someone we were like, okay, it kind of does make sense because he really didn't like him, blah, 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 blah. So it was kind of anticlimax, but I guess it was not supposed to be like a peak moment. But I foresaw it. And I just need to say, I conquered through this book because I was like, there's something. And then when I reached to the light, I was like, hey, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm crazy because I thought everyone saw the light. Well, I'm being...
Park that thought, because the last question is on the light.
Okay, okay.
Anne-Marie, your thoughts on, did you think that it was Stanley who killed Maali?
No, I expected it to be Didi, and I think there were a couple of lines where, like he would say something like, "Oh, if you ever did this, I would kill you. If you ever cheated on me, I would kill you." So I felt like, oh, is this like, breadcrumbs that were being left? Is it actually gonna be Didi? So I really didn't expect it to be Stanley, but I was thinking about that actually, and I felt like there was something very subtle that was done in the decision for Stanley to have been the one who was responsible for his death. Because you have the whole story set up this backdrop of, political assassinations, people going missing and being killed. And there were so many reasons why Maali, as a photojournalist, would have been murdered intentionally. And actually it turning out to be Maali's partner's homophobic father, essentially, it really made me think about I feel like the kind of
unseen, unspoken challenges that people still go through, that, you know, his life was ended by someone who didn't want him to be with his son, and to kind of bring shame upon his son and the rest of his family and so on. And it made me think more about when we look at these, even right now, when we see conflicts that are happening, there are still voices, stories who we never hear about because they are dying because of existing cultural issues, right? So I was watching a video of honor killings that are still happening in Afghanistan, and you know, completely separate to the conflict that's happening politically. It's family members who are killing women most of the time. And so, yeah, it really made me think about just the kind of ongoing violence that people who are from minoritized groups, in this case, it was because of his sexuality, the ongoing violence that they face, and how within the context of a conflict, it's easy to overlook that violence, but it's very real. It's very much happening, and it means something to look at that with the eye of empathy. So yeah, it really left me with something that I didn't expect, because I was like, oh, there's something happening here that's really clever, and I need to kind of tap into it. So yeah.
Thanks, Anne-Marie, for that observation, because you're right? I think when there is a national conflict going on, we forget about kind of the continuous violence in society, right? Whether it's homophobia or gender-based violence, or, you know, child abuse, or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of like there seems to be a stream where there's always violence, and there are different degrees of it. And when there's a bigger and more amplified kind of gruesome violence going on, the continuous violence and those victims are forgotten. And I didn't think of it that way, that even in having Stanley as the one who murders Maali, you kind of highlight that there is another war that's going on that we've forgotten about in this bigger war, which is, yeah, I think that is key. Connie, your thoughts on, did you see Stanley murdering Maali?
Okay. Generally, I always feel like I can see these things coming. I can see how it's gonna end, who's gonna kill. Had no clue. It took me by surprise. Stanley was not even in my race. I suspected it was either Didi or Jackie, primarily because Maali blocked out that specific memory. He could remember everything except who killed him. I think for me, it suggested it was that traumatic, it was that close to him. It's something he wanted to forget, like the love of my life killed me. It's not something I want to remember. And I thought Jackie, not even Didi, I thought Didi was an easy guess. I thought Jackie might be the one. And Stanley came out of nowhere for me. I did the whole in public.
Poor Jackie.
Because I didn't see Stanley coming at all. I needed a minute after that. It's like, how?
Why?
I genuinely thought either Didi or Jackie, because those were the people he sort of loved him, and he never expected them to kill him. And because they did, he blocked it out. And that's why it took him forever to get that memory back. But Stanley, you could have remembered Stanley from the first moon and say that's the drama. I mean, yeah, but anyway, I didn't see this one coming. And I love the twist that came with it. At some point, we thought it was the minister. At some point, we thought it was this person and that person and the gambling guys and this and this and this. I absolutely love the ride he took me on, because I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, Shehan kept us captivated. We were all discussing this, except the people figured out at the beginning. Leah, you'll be the last one on this question because I want to talk about the light, because we're already over time.
Oh yeah, just a quick one. I think I appreciated the anticlimax of this story by introducing the because I think it was accidental. There's no way that man was intending to kill Maali in that way. I think it was an argument that escalated. I think I thought he was going because when I was reading the book and all through and through the way he was trying to really push Didi and Jackie to find his pictures. I thought it was going to be someone who was in the pictures. So I thought it was going to be one of the, the pictures he had taken. I thought it was someone who was involved in the war or someone who was financing the war. I like Didi, so I never thought it was him, but I feel so sad that a lot of people thought it was him. I thought he loved him, and I was okay with that. So I think it was the anticlimax that I really appreciated because he was kind of drawing us back to the things that we forgot. And I think it's just life, we're always focusing on the big ideas and all this. And just one small thing of a homophobic father killed this great photographer. And I think that for me, it was sad though, because I think like everyone, I didn't expect him. I didn't even think about him. He was not even in my thought process throughout the book. He was not a main character. But that's why I think sometimes just that small fly on the wall that does the work for us. So it was sad. I was hoping I would get like a finish because I'd read about the guy, so I thought he was going to be killed by political, the political. People who are fighting against his pictures, someone who wanted to maybe take the pictures away from him. So it was just interesting to see him die like that. And I think it highlighted the entire homophobia theme that he was also trying to discuss in the book, and just to show how it's still a prevalent thing in their country. And I think it's also a point of discussion when people are discussing gender issues, especially in these trying times that we are in. So those are my thoughts on the ending.
Thanks, Leah, for that. We're over time, so I just wanted us to just talk about the light. There were so many things I wanted to discuss, the photos and all of that. But anyway, so a lot of people kind of drag themselves to get to past moon 1 and 2, and then at 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, we're like, okay, we're getting closer to the light. And then you get to the light. I got to the light and I was like, what's happening in this light? Like, what is this? I had to read all these pages to get to this light. This is so not satisfying. I thought you get into this light and you're transported to this wonderful land, and then you get to the light and you have choices. 5 drinks, 1 you forget, 1 you remember, 1 you're forgiven, 1 you go where you belong. I was like, what nonsense is this? And then obviously Maali chooses to go where he belongs, and now he's at Dr. Renee, finds himself as one of the people who is supposed to help the dead souls to get to their light. I hated that ending. It made me not want to die. It made me not want to live in Maali's afterlife. I was like, this is nonsense. Where is the milk and honey? So once you guys got to that light, I just want to know, were you satisfied with what you got? And if you were Maali, had you chosen to go to the light, or would you have chosen differently? Connie?
Okay, for me, it was more of the 7 moons than the light. And the light highlighted the 7 moons. To say the doctor and the helpers, whoever those guys were, their primary job is to push everybody towards the light. There's nothing there. You've got people like Sena who are pushing revenge and karma and this and that. You've got all these ghosts that are eating other ghosts. It's crowded. Their primary job is to move everybody out of the in-between. It's not even about the light because there's nothing there. If they were to tell us what's happening there, the in-between will be even more crowded because nobody would want to go to the light. There's nothing. There's absolutely, like, I would have just said to the lady, pick anything at this point. After the 7 moons are passed, I don't care for the light anymore. Whatever you choose is irrelevant at this point. I think it was the light highlights the 7 moons. what happens, the in between, it's pretty much what determines where you going. Are you coming back? Are you staying there for karma? Are you the whisperer? Are you whatever you choose to be? It happens in the 7 years, but there's not enough space for all of us to be there, to whisper to the living, to torture the living, to get our karma. So they need to push us into the light. So we forget, we reincarnate, we do whatever, and just it's good. For me, that was my understanding of the life, because I was like, what life?
So
you were just asking me through all of this. Don't take the 7 moons. Just go, clock out. Keep it moving.
So you're saying, Connie, we basically were all in this in between that's crowded, and they're just trying to usher us out. Like, there's no space. Move on.
Move on, because there's more action in the in between than the life. Because I can get to choose. I can stay there and visit my loved ones in their dreams and haunt my ex, and there's so much I can do in the in between. There's more drama there than the life. And then if you were to tell me, Con, you can sit here, talk to your ex, or go to the light. I'll choose the in between. So there was no space. They needed to usher everybody out of the way without telling them what the light, because the light is pretty much nothing. It's like the light is, you must forget, you must reincarnate, keep it moving. You'll come back again this way. We just need to keep this space clear and keep the light down there as normal as possible. Because can you imagine if everybody could just whisper? The chaos that would be there in the now. So they needed to clear out the space. A couple of people like Stella and Ben will fall through the cracks. So they can't afford for all of us to fall through the cracks.
You sound like you're echoing Litlotlo's thoughts. He says, I would have chosen Senna. His option is much better than rebirth.
Yes. Run around with the monsters that trying to eat you, playing hide and seek with them. Then come back to this crappy life that you've already lived. You've already experienced it. What else is there to see? There's more action in the industry than back here. I wouldn't come back for nothing.
Thanks, Connie. Little says the light is much like the Rainbow Nation. It does not exist. It's just a tree. Kgosi, what were your thoughts on the light, and would you have chosen to go to the light in hindsight?
I feel like the journey to the light it was a lot. It was an adventure, and I think the light was a full circle moment, especially those last lines where he jumped through something and he was reincarnated, right? Because life is a cycle. I think 2 things informed my opinion on this. There's an anime called Angel Beats that's available on Netflix, and in that anime, it's kids like teenagers who've passed away, and they're in purgatory in a high school, and they're stuck there until they've accepted what's happened to them. And once they've accepted what happens to them in life, they move on away from purgatory. And also when you're watching those guys and like people and they're connecting with their ancestors, and ancestors saying this is going wrong in your life because of 1, 2, 3, I think it just goes to show that there is life after death, if I can put it that way. And so for me, him hanging around in the in-between, until what point? At some point he needs to make a decision, because clearly he's not resting, he's not dead, he's still alive in the afterlife. So him getting reincarnated is something I've heard before in Eastern religions about. They believe in reincarnation, and there's stories about kids that remember past lives. This reincarnation takes me back to Paulo Coelho's book, The Aleph, I think, and it touches on that. So it just sparks your mind to think, if I could get reincarnated and come back, what could I come back as? And also, have I lived before and this is just another life that I'm experiencing? So me ending happy with it, it summed everything up. It was beautiful.
Wow, I mean, maybe you love Earth. That's no problem. I think the rest of us hate it here. Because I'm like, I'm not coming back. I always say to my family, either I'm coming back as Oprah's dogs, or don't bring me back. I'm not doing this again. So you you want to do this again. So I'm like, thumbs up. Don't bring me back. Oblivion. Do me then, Bali, then we wrap it up.
Yeah, I just also want to comment on like imagine going through the 7 moons like that, almost being eaten by that thingy,
Mahakala, Kali.
yes, and then only to come back and work at a government institution. Oh, Wabakum. That's what the light feels like for me. It's like, okay, no, I'm like you. I'd rather come back as Oprah's dog, or just leave me in the in between and go around. Like could you say go around the center and like no, oh my face.
I think we're far more chaotic and than Atlekhang, because clearly I would have also been like, look, leave me with Senna, let me cause chaos, let me bring karma. Hey, let me be that guy. But Atlekhang, I think you're the good guy. You would have been our Maali and ushering us to the light, and we would have been defiantly saying, hell no, Maali. Okay, Nobelung, you'll be the last person.
Okay, cool. So I think, yeah, Connie said it all. I was just also there like, okay, that's it. That's really it. But what I did appreciate about the book is that at the very beginning, there was a question that was posed and we actually got a definite answer. So I really appreciate that. So it wasn't left, I guess it is still left to the reader to decide, if there is an afterlife and, what happens there. But in the book itself, it does, gives us an answer that there is an afterlife and yeah, things just might be worse. They might be worse there.
It's a whole lot worse.
Yeah, things just might be worse there than here. But that's it.
Right. Nobelungu.
Connie said it all.
Thanks, Mbali. Nobelungu, you're the last speaker for today.
Okay, so I didn't reach the end of the book yet, but in terms of you guys talking about the light and coming back and all of that, it's reminding me of the quote. I'll just read it from the book where it says, "If the light is heaven, as this Madam Doc tells, and if the in-between is purgatory filled with the lost, then what does that make down below? Hell," shouted someone in the crowd. And that for me pretty much explains why since I don't believe in heaven, I don't believe in hell, and I also don't want to come back. I feel like, does it get more hellish than earth? I mean, there's people dying in Congo, there's people dying in Palestine, and even in the book there's a quote where it says, if there's a heavenly father, then he must be like your father, lazy and something. So I'm like, yeah, he is lazy, because what is happening? So for me, I also would definitely not want to come back. I feel like this has to be the hell.
I think,
but anyway, besides that, I absolutely enjoy these so much. Thank you for choosing this book.
Leah also says hell is earth is definitely our hell. So thank you, everyone. I know this was one of those discussions that needed 3 or 4 hours because we didn't touch on so many things. I had like 23 questions and discussion points for this discussion, and we only got through about 10 of them. But I was nervous about doing this and facilitating this book, because sometimes we read books that aren't as challenging and then we breeze through them and they're fun. And so when I said, oh, let me do May, it was literally because didn't want to do the April because it was too close when Atlehang asked. And then when I started reading, I was like, I don't think this was a good decision to want to facilitate this discussion because it was such a heavy book and the themes were so many. But I really had a great time. I think we had one of our biggest turnouts, and it's testament to just how great this book is. So thank you very much. The discussion was lively. You guys have brought so many different thoughts, and this is one of my 5-star reads, honestly. I'm going to be recommending it to everybody. Before I hand over to Atlehang, I just wanted to say in closing, I think this was an important book for us to read in the month of May in the context of South Africa. The book references 1948 and the beginning of the apartheid regime. And our next book club will be after the national elections. So this is my soapbox moment to say that, I think politics and our histories globally and the history as a country is so important, and as well as the role that we play as citizens. So I'm hoping that everyone who's registered to vote will go vote on the 29th. I don't care who you vote for, just go vote. I want to quote one of my favorite musicians, Mandisi Janchis, who says, he writes a song about political parties and politicians, and he says they are all thieves, but we as citizens, when we stand up and wake up, we can make a difference. So I hope on the 29th you'll vote. I'll see you after the 29th, the next book club, when we don't know if things would have changed or not in the country. It's going to be fun times. But see you second week of June when we reach the death of Vivek Oji. And thank you so much for letting me facilitate this session. I had a great time. And we're going to be planning that year-end function, guys. Atlehang, over to you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for honoring the space. And I know we went over time, so thank you for hanging out a few more minutes. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Lakini, for facilitating this. I wanted to use this opportunity to ask for the next couple of sessions, please raise your hand to facilitate. It gets a lot when I'm facilitating one after the other. It's a lot. So I would really like a different perspective from different facilitators. And I think Dawn offered to take over the next for the death of Vivek Oji. So it would be really nice to get that context, especially since the book is set in Nigeria and Dawn is in Nigeria. And yeah, on this book, I didn't expect the political context. When I chose it, I was just happy for the cover. I didn't even read the synopsis when I chose it. Oh no, it was one of my suggestions. And I didn't read the cover. I just saw that. I was like, you know what, Middle East cover is pretty, let's go. So it turned out to be political, and it turned out to be in the month that we're going to vote. So very important to put perspective and context around the decision that we're going to make. And so guys, I'm really happy that we are 6 meetings in. It doesn't feel like 6 meetings. Can't believe it's been 6 months, but I really enjoy engaging with you guys every month. That's my TED Talk, and we will take it to the WhatsApp group.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
What is stop? Like, do you have to stop recording on your side, or can I do it? Okay. Manage recording. Stop recording. I've stopped. And then I'll stop streaming. Stop streaming. Yeah. Thank you.